Hello everyone. Today's video is about two different topics. One is about finding the optimal dose of magnesium and how to finagle that when one's diet is changing, and also about whether or not one can recover from mold illness when they are still living in mold. As per usual, nothing I'm saying should be construed as medical advice. This is for informational purposes only. If you need medical advice, please talk to your healthcare provider to get that advice. So the first question here is, says, what is the appropriate dosage of magnesium for maintenance in women and men? I have had to use magnesium when I switched to a more carnivore type of diet. I use magnesium glycinate and half magnesium oxide. I am a female and do approximately 400 milligrams of magnesium daily. And they mentioned something about some medical condition related to peristalsis of the intestines. And do we increase our water intake as well when we are constipated? Excuse me, I'm trying to switch to a semi-carnivore diet. So thanks for the questions. And for context, I posted a video recently about what are my top therapies that I recommend for my patients who are constipated, and therapies that don't cause bloating as a side effect, as things like fiber and certain other things can sometimes. So that was the subtext for this question. So in terms of the appropriate maintenance dose for magnesium for folks, to be perfectly frank, a lot of my patients, I recommend that they go on a good multi-nutrient, so vitamins, minerals, all the B vitamins, C, D, E, K, A, and then minerals and trace minerals. So I'll oftentimes recommend just for health maintenance that my patients go on a multi, and most multis are going to probably have around 50 to 100, maybe 200 milligrams of magnesium in there. So I hate to say it, but just with our world such as it is, and food production systems and all these different things, and all the stress and toxins and things that we're exposed to, I think that for my patients at least, I recommend at least getting a bit of an extra nutritional boost, even if they're feeling really good. So they're feeling great, it's probably not a bad idea to take a one-a-day multi, a one-a-day good multi, not a Centrum, not the cheap drugstore brand. I mean, there are some great cheap drugstore brand products that are out there, don't get me wrong, and when it comes to a multi, I've never seen a good cheap drugstore brand multi like a Centrum before. So I guess from that perspective, I suppose that I do ultimately recommend that folks take a magnesium supplement, but just kind of like a thank you helping to be on the safe side for my patients who are generally healthy. Now, many of my patients, they have symptoms that necessitates magnesium, and over time they can usually get away with taking less magnesium than when they initially needed those full therapeutic dosages to help their symptoms, like their restless leg syndrome or their insomnia or their anxiety or their constipation or whatever it was that we were treating. But some of them do find that they feel the best when they take at least a certain maintenance dose of magnesium. So we're kind of the question about, what's a good maintenance dose? It's a bit of it's a nuanced question, right? For a lot of folks, they might not need to take any magnesium, but maybe getting a little bit in there just for good measure and a multi is good. For other folks, they're going to, need to kind of eventually whittle down to a good maintenance dose that they feel the best on. In my opinion, I think that one of the reasons that so many of my patients they come in, they have, complex chronic health challenges, not all of them, but the vast majority of them. And they're on their antimicrobial herbs for their gut issues, and their mitochondrial support for their low energy issues, and their adrenal support for their stress management issues, and their whatever it is that they're taking, their stuff for their liver issues, whatever. And they're on various supplements over the course of time, they're feeling better, and then, maybe I don't see them for 6 to 12 months after they're feeling, that they're all better. And it's okay, here's your kind of regimen that you're working with, and let's follow up in a few months. And, they're feeling good, life gets busy, and I don't see them for 6 to 12 months, sometimes 2 years, sometimes 5 years. I've been practicing for a while. I've had patients where I haven't seen them in 10 years, and they come back to see me. They're like, yeah, I was doing great. But the point here of the story is that when patients come back, if there's one supplement that they're still taking, 9 times out of 10, it's magnesium. They're like, yeah, that magnesium, you couldn't, I've had patients say, paraphrasing slightly, but things to the effect of they'd have to pry the magnesium out of my cold, dead hands before I'd ever stop taking that stuff. So it can be really hugely beneficial for them. But again, over time, they need sort of a lower dose. So for some people, it might be 150 milligrams. For some, it might be 200. For some, it might be 400. Some, it might be 800. It just really depends on kind of what they're feeling the best with. So there's not really a stock answer in terms of a maintenance dose. And for men versus women, I wouldn't say that there's a significant difference there. Generally, like, yes, a 250-pound man is going to maybe need less than, like, a 100-pound man, and it doesn't really, one's biological sex does not really come into the equation, in my opinion, in my experience, by and large. There was a question here around right. I guess it was just more of a statement or comment about needing to take more magnesium with diet changes. So, anyways, I thought there was a question there, but I guess it was already baked into the question. There, just more of a statement. But just to speak to that very quickly, with some of my patients, they don't need magnesium, but they go on a modified ketogenic diet, or they go on a full ketogenic diet, or they go on a carnivore diet, and they're not eating as many carbs. There's not as much, maybe there's not as much food volume because they're trying to lose weight. And by going on a diet like that, their natural hunger sensors they goes down, and so because carbs tend to make us want to eat more carbs, so they're eating less. There's maybe less fiber in their diets, and some patients do get some transient constipation. So I do recommend that they start a magnesium supplement, or maybe they need to up the dose of their current magnesium supplement, which is what it sounds like this person was doing. The other question here, though, was, do we increase our water intake as well when we are constipated? And I think maybe the subtext of the question is, if one is taking magnesium to help with the constipation, do they need to take more water? Just like if you're taking fiber to help with constipation, you definitely want to drink enough water so the fiber doesn't just turn to cement basically in the intestines and cause more problems. So generally speaking, staying hydrated is a good choice. When I ask my patients to bump up their magnesium intake, I generally don't ask them to specifically increase their water intake because they're taking magnesium, but most of my patients are drinking enough water already. I screen for that with my intake form. Some of them aren't, and then we talk about getting them drinking more water, but it's not like kind of as mandatory, if you will, as taking a fiber supplement. The other question is totally different topic, and talking about mold. So can you recover from mold and be back to relatively normal while still being in a moldy environment? Other family members are absolutely fine in the moldy environment. Here I am feeling wrecked, which theoretically means I could be fine in a moldy environment too. So yeah, I'm sorry to hear you're feeling wrecked, and yeah, it can be very sort of confusing and challenging when other people in the household are feeling fine and then you're feeling unwell, and hopefully there's a good supportive family environment there, but sometimes it's really rough, where it's like one person feels off and say, it's the house, we need to remediate, we need to do this, and everyone else in the house is like, we're fine, like this is a you problem, like this is all in your head or something like that. And it's very, very sad when that happens. So I hope there's no element of that in this case or any other cases out there, but I know it does happen. Long and short of it is that the logic there is very sound. It's like, yeah, if other people in the house feel fine, then I should be able to feel fine too. And on the one hand, kind of superficially, it's like I completely agree with that. On the other hand, there are cases where one does need to get out of the moldy environment in order to be able to heal. I've had many patients over the course of time where they're still living in mold. It's not like absolutely god-awful mold where, like, the black mold everywhere, and it's anybody who walks in there gets a headache, and it's just like the place should be condemned. It's like not mold like that, but there is mold in the home, and the patients do get better. It can be slower in some cases. Sometimes they get better nice and quickly, even though they're still living in mold. But I have had some patients who did not start turning the corner until they got out of the moldy environment, like absolutely. So it just really depends on the sensitivity level of the person, depends on the toxicity of the mold levels, then of course it depends on what they're doing. So patients who can tolerate treatment while they're in that moldy environment, they're going to have a better chance of getting better while they're still in mold. Now hopefully they're able to do some mold damage control, like using, say, an ultra HEPA filter, not just a regular HEPA filter, but an ultra HEPA filter like an Air Doctor or an IntelliPure or something like that, and they're maybe using like essential oil diffusers. They're trying to quarantine off areas that are moldy or that type of thing, and so that's a good prognostic indicator that one might be able to get better while still living in mold. But then some patients, they just are so inflamed, they're so sensitive, so reactive to things when they're living in mold that they just can't even tolerate the treatments, and then it's just a mess, and they can't feel better until they get out of mold. So that definitely does happen too, and it's really sad, and it's challenging, and it's sometimes financially very impactful, sometimes financially debilitating, sometimes financially impossible, which is why when patients work with me and there's mold in their home and they're like, well, I can't we talk about, remediation options and this and that, but yeah, I just can't move, or I can move in 6 months. I don't say, well, call me in 6 months and just suffer until then. Like, absolutely not. Like, we're going to do the best we can. But yeah, it can be more challenging to get better when living in mold. But kind of circling back to the original question, that logic where it's like, yeah, if my family members feel fine, like then therefore I should be able to feel fine in this house. That is true, and that is like a litmus test that I use with my patients, where if they say, like, yeah, I'm feeling a lot better, but like I have to like avoid mold like the plague. It's like, okay, avoid mold, but like you're not all the way better. Like, you quote unquote should be able to tolerate mold. All of us should be able to. Now, granted, there are certain genetic differences with, HLA genes and whatnot that make it a lot harder for some of us to deal with mold toxins. But in my opinion, in my experience, I would say the vast majority, I don't know if I'd say all, because there's always going to be exceptions, but the vast majority of folks should be able to heal to the point where they're able to tolerate mold. In my opinion and my experience, and I have some objective data to back this up, a lot of patients who are just still like super sensitive to mold, or the mold canaries, they feel okay as long as they're just avoiding mold like the plague. A lot of them have nervous system dysregulation, and the objective data I'm alluding to there is when we do brain maps and we look at their brain maps, we see like, oh wow, your nervous system is in this fight or flight mode. You have this this like kind of hyper arousal kind of a nervous system, and it's that's something that's probably driving a lot of those symptoms, to be perfectly frank. And it's not to say like it's in their head, it's that their nervous systems have been traumatized. They have some amygdala dysfunction, other things like that going on, and then they're just really extra reactive to stuff. And so the patients who come to see me and they've done everything, like every nasal spray, every biofilm disruptor, every detox thing you can imagine, like they've supported themselves at the wazoo, and they're still really reactive to mold. It's like, that's where we're going to start looking more at that nervous system modulating supports, like amygdala retraining, or like primal trust, which include things like amygdala retraining, maybe neurofeedback, maybe the Safe and Sound protocol, different things I've talked about in other videos before, and there's other resources out there on those topics too. But with all that being said, while one should ideally be able to remediate or get healthy to the point where they can live in the house as well, where you're starting from makes all the difference in the world. So like, for example, if I had, say, like, a 200-pound sandbag, and somebody put it on my, I was standing there and somebody, a couple of people came over and like put it on my shoulder, I could probably hold a 200-pound sandbag on my shoulder. I'm a pretty big, pretty strong guy. I could probably do that. And now that it's mentioned, I'd like to give it a try, actually. It'd be kind of fun to play with a 200-pound sandbag. So I'd be able to hold that up. But if I was lying, face down on the ground, and somebody put a 200-pound sandbag on my back and said, okay, I need you to, without dropping the sandbag, you need to stand up and get that on your shoulder, I'd be like, I don't think I can. Like, I'm pinned on the ground, and I've been pinned on the ground by 200 pounds in my jiu-jitsu classes. So I know that it's not easy, especially 200 pounds of dead weight. That ain't easy. So if I'm standing up, I can handle that huge weight, but if I'm lying on the ground face down with this weight on my back, it's going to be really hard to do that. So the folks that are living in mold and are feeling just fine, their health is in a good state already, presumably. They don't have issues with their detox genes. They haven't been beaten down already by, the mycotoxins and causing all this mitochondrial dysfunction and glutathione depletion in the liver and cofactor depletion and all these different things in the body. So they can handle it, but that person who's, lying face down with a 200-pound sandbag on their back, they are going to need to do some work to feel better and to get out of that situation. Like, maybe they need to get the sandbag off their back, i.e., leave the house, then start getting healthy, and then they'll be able to start handling it when the sandbag's not going to bother them as much. They're already like standing upright. So hopefully that kind of weird sandbaggy metaphor made sense, and yeah, that would be my thought around that. So I'm a huge proponent of keeping people in their homes as much as humanly possible, but there are some circumstances where it just seems kind of challenging, if not impossible, but those are not every case. I know there's doctors out there who say, oh, you're in mold, like, I won't treat you until you're out of mold. There's no way to get better, and that's just frankly not true, because I've seen the opposite to be true, but there are cases where it definitely is true. I hope that this was of interest. If you wouldn't mind taking a quick moment to please like, share, subscribe, and or post a quick comment on the video, I'd really appreciate it. So thank you in advance for taking a second to do that. And if there's any questions on these topics or anything else, just post it in the comment section below, and I will do my best to answer as soon as I can.